Sheriff, that's him. That's the squatter. I want him off HOA property now. Cynthia Vale pointed at me like she'd just identified a wanted man. I looked at her. You mean my property? She laughed. Your property? You're living in an abandoned farmhouse, pretending 46 acres belong to you. People like you don't own land like this. Then she turned to the sheriff. He has no valid deed. He's been threatening residents, blocking emergency access, and interfering with an authorized HOA project. We've already verified everything with the county. That last part was a lie. Honestly, almost everything she'd just said was a lie. But I didn't argue. Cynthia folded her arms. Sheriff, arrest him for trespassing. Maybe a night in jail will finally teach him that community rules apply to everyone. The sheriff stared at her. Then he walked straight past her and stopped in front of me. Cynthia snapped. Why are you talking to him? I'm the HOA president. The sheriff ignored her and held out his hand. Good morning, Judge Mercer. Cynthia's smile vanished. Judge? I shook his hand. Morning, Sheriff. She had called the sheriff to remove a squatter. What she didn't know was that I was the county judge. But that wasn't even the part that would destroy her story. Because by then, I'd already found a map showing exactly why Cynthia needed everyone to believe I didn't own my land. Calling me a squatter had only been the first lie. 3 weeks earlier, Cynthia Vale had no idea who I was. I preferred it that way. The 46 acres beside Cedar Ridge had been in my family since 1919. My great-grandfather bought the first parcel after returning from the First World War. My grandfather expanded it. My father kept the farmhouse standing for almost 50 years. When he died, the property passed to me through a recorded deed. Cedar Ridge came decades later. Expensive houses, stone entrance signs, private landscaping, and an HOA that had apparently forgotten where its neighborhood ended. I learned that on my fourth morning back. I was replacing a rotten fence post when a white SUV stopped beside my driveway. A woman stepped out carrying a clipboard. She looked at my muddy boots, then my old pickup, then the farmhouse. Are you the caretaker? No. The contractor? No. Her eyes narrowed. Then who gave you permission to be here? Nobody. She smiled like I'd just confessed. That's what I thought. I set down my level. Nobody gave me permission, because nobody needs to. Her expression changed. I'm Cynthia Vale, president of the Cedar Ridge HOA. And you are? Daniel Mercer. She waited, apparently expecting me to be impressed. When I wasn't, she pointed toward my fence. You can't make exterior changes without architectural approval. This property isn't in your HOA. Everything inside Cedar Ridge's development boundary is subject to our community standards. Show me the boundary. She laughed. I don't have time to educate you on property law. I almost smiled at that. Instead, I went back to the fence. The next morning, an orange notice was stapled to my gate. Asterisk unauthorized occupancy. Asterisk the morning after that. Asterisk unapproved fencing. Asterisk then. Asterisk obstruction of community access. Asterisk that one got my attention. My driveway had never been community access. It ran from the county road to our farmhouse exactly as it had for generations. I called Cynthia. She answered with Cedar Ridge HOA. I received your notices. Oh, the squatter. I stopped. Excuse me? We're still trying to determine who authorized you to occupy that structure. I own it. According to you and according to my deed. She sighed. Mr. Mercer, people wave around old family paperwork all the time. That doesn't establish current ownership. Have you checked the county records? We've done our due diligence. That wasn't my question. Her voice hardened. Our residents pay substantial assessments to protect their property values. We cannot allow someone to occupy an abandoned structure, park an old truck outside, install random fencing, and create a safety concern. There it was. My truck, my boots, my farmhouse. She hadn't researched me. She'd categorized me. You've never seen my deed, I said. We have our own records. Send them to me. Silence. Then Cynthia said, You don't belong here, Mr. Mercer. The sooner you understand that, the easier this will be. She hung up. I didn't call back. I started a file. Every notice, every photograph, every date, every conversation. 3 days later, a Cedar Ridge resident named Tom Alvarez stopped beside my fence. He looked embarrassed. You know Cynthia's telling people you're squatting out here, right? No. She told the board the county confirmed this property was abandoned. That changed things. Cynthia wasn't merely wrong anymore. She was claiming official confirmation that didn't exist. That evening, I pulled out the map attached to her latest notice and laid it beside my certified survey. Same county road, same creek, same subdivision. But one line was different. On my survey, Cedar Ridge stopped at my eastern boundary. On Cynthia's map, a thick red line crossed onto my property, swallowed 6 acres, and continued directly toward my driveway. Beside it were 3 words I'd never seen on any recorded survey. Asterisk future west gate access. Asterisk I stared at them for a long time. Then I understood. Cynthia wasn't trying to remove a squatter. She was trying to remove the owner. Calling me a squatter was arrogance. Drawing a road across my land was planning. The next morning, I went to the county records office and pulled everything connected to my parcel. The deed was exactly where it belonged. Owner, Daniel Mercer. 46 acres. No transfer to Cedar Ridge. No HOA covenant. No community access easement. No pending ownership dispute. Then I pulled the original Cedar Ridge subdivision plat. Its western boundary stopped exactly where my survey said it stopped. I asked whether any amendment had been recorded. None. Any access easement? None. I requested certified copies and didn't mention my position. I wasn't there as a judge. I was there as a property owner. When I got home, another envelope was waiting on my gate. Asterisk final notice to vacate. Asterisk the Cedar Ridge HOA was giving me 72 hours to leave my own farmhouse. I read the allegations. Unauthorized occupancy, interference with community access, safety hazard. Then reached one sentence. Asterisk county ownership records have confirmed that Mr. Mercer possesses no enforceable interest in the disputed property. Asterisk I looked at the certified deed I'd collected less than an hour earlier. Then called Cynthia. I have your notice to vacate. Then you understand the deadline. Who at the county told you I don't own this land? Our legal team reviewed the matter. Which legal team? That information is privileged. That's not how privilege works. She laughed. You really enjoy pretending you understand the law, don't you? I looked down at my deed. You wrote that the county confirmed your claim. Who confirmed it? Mr. Mercer. I'm not debating this. You have 72 hours. And after that, we take possession. I stopped. Possession of what? She hung up. 2 nights later, Tom Alvarez answered that question. He sent me a recording from an HOA meeting. Cynthia's voice came through clearly. We are resolving the unauthorized occupancy issue on the western parcel. Once that individual is removed, Phase 2 can proceed. Someone asked, Phase 2 of what? The West Gate. A presentation appeared, a landscaped secondary entrance, stone pillars, decorative lighting, visitor lanes. And the road ran directly across my property. Then another rendering, walking paths, visitor parking, landscaping. 6 acres of my land, colored green. Asterisk Cedar Ridge Community Expansion Area. Asterisk a resident asked, does the HOA own that property? Cynthia answered immediately. We've secured the necessary access rights. Line number 2. Another resident asked, what about the man living there? He's a squatter occupying an abandoned family structure. Once law enforcement moves him, this nuisance will be behind us. I replayed that sentence, then saved the recording in 3 places. The next morning, I reviewed Cedar Ridge's financial disclosures. Preliminary engineering, traffic studies, architectural renderings, survey work, contractor deposits. The board had already spent tens of thousands of dollars preparing a project on land it didn't own. Then Tom brought me an HOA newsletter from 6 weeks before I'd returned. Across the front was a polished rendering. Asterisk coming soon, Cedar Ridge West Gate. Asterisk I recognized the oak tree in the picture, the stone wall, the driveway. Mine. That was when the timeline became clear. Cynthia hadn't decided I was a squatter after meeting me. She needed me to be a squatter before I ever came home. Because if I was the owner, her West Gate didn't exist. And if 72 hours couldn't make me disappear, I suspected Cynthia would find someone with a badge who she thought could. Cynthia didn't wait 72 hours. She waited until Tuesday morning. At 8:17, 2 contractor trucks rolled through my open gate. 4 men began unloading stakes, flags, and surveying equipment. One was already 20 yards inside my property. I walked over. Morning. Who hired you? The foreman checked his paperwork. Cedar Ridge, HOA. We're marking the West Gate access corridor. Did they give you a recorded easement? They gave us authorization. That's different. I handed him my certified survey. This is private property. There is no recorded HOA easement. He studied it. Mrs. Vale told us ownership was cleared. It isn't. He looked at his crew, then at the survey. Are you asking us to leave? I'm asking you to call your insurer before driving another stake into property you haven't verified. 10 minutes later, they were packing up. Nobody yelled. Nobody threatened anyone. At 8:41, Cynthia's white SUV came flying into my driveway. She jumped out. What did you do? I showed them the survey. You had no authority to stop authorized work. I own the ground. Her jaw tightened. Stop saying that. Why? Because repeating a lie doesn't make it true. You are interfering with an authorized community project. Bring me the recorded easement. You don't dictate terms to this HOA. On my property, I do. She pulled out her phone. Fine. I've tried to handle this civilly. She called dispatch and put the phone on speaker. Her voice changed immediately, suddenly frightened. My name is Cynthia Vale. I'm president of the Cedar Ridge HOA. We have an aggressive squatter refusing to leave community property. I stared at her. He confronted our contractors and forced them off the site. The foreman looked over. That isn't what happened. Cynthia raised a finger. He's becoming confrontational right now. I took out my phone and started recording. Several residents have expressed concerns that he may be unstable. There were no residents there. We're concerned he could become violent. That was the moment I realized Cynthia wasn't just exaggerating. She was building a police narrative, sentence by sentence. Cynthia, I said, would you repeat that for my camera? She smiled gladly and looked directly into my phone. You are illegally occupying HOA property. You threatened authorized workers, and you're refusing a lawful order to leave. The foreman stepped forward. Ma'am, he never threatened us. Cynthia spun around. This doesn't concern you. It does if you're accusing him of threatening my crew. Get off the property. The foreman looked at me. I nodded toward the road. Probably best. Cynthia watched him leave, then looked at me. You think witnesses are going to save you? No. I put my phone away. Records usually do. 12 minutes later, 2 sheriff's cruisers pulled in. Cynthia smiled. Finally, Sheriff Robert Hale stepped out with a deputy. Cynthia rushed toward him, carrying a folder. Sheriff, thank God, that's him. The squatter. Hale glanced at the papers, then at me. Cynthia shoved the folder toward him. I've documented everything. Unauthorized occupancy, interference with HOA contractors, obstruction of community access. He refuses to leave. Hale looked at her. You verified all this? Yes. Which office? Our legal department handled it. She pointed at me again. I want him removed. If he refuses, arrest him. Hale handed her folder to his deputy, then walked toward me. Cynthia followed. You need to be firm with him, Sheriff. He thinks rules don't apply to him. Hale stopped in front of me. Cynthia smiled. Then he held out his hand. Good morning, Judge Mercer. Her smile disappeared. Judge? I shook his hand. Morning, Sheriff. She stared at us. What does he mean, Judge? Hale turned. He means Judge Mercer. For several seconds, Cynthia couldn't speak. Then she found her voice. You're a judge? Yes. Why didn't you tell me? You never asked. Her face went pale. I handed Hale my certified deed and survey. Don't take my word for anything, Robert. I nodded toward Cynthia's folder. Check hers too. Cynthia recovered enough to say, my documents are perfectly valid. The deputy laid both maps on the hood of the cruiser. 30 seconds later, he frowned. Sheriff, he pointed to Cynthia's paperwork. This parcel number doesn't match the legal description. Cynthia stepped forward. That's a technicality. Hale looked at her. Not when you're asking me to arrest someone. And for the first time that morning, Cynthia didn't look angry. She looked scared. The trespassing complaint ended right there, but the paperwork didn't. Sheriff Hale compared Cynthia's map with my certified survey. Her parcel number belonged to Cedar Ridge. Mine belonged to me. There was no recorded transfer connecting the two. Cynthia kept insisting it was an administrative mistake. Hale asked one question. Who prepared this map? Our attorney. Name? That information is privileged. It was the same answer she'd given me. Hale closed her folder. I'm not asking for legal advice. I'm asking who prepared the document you gave my department as evidence of a crime. Cynthia said nothing. 2 days later, Cedar Ridge announced an emergency HOA meeting. Asterisk Western property dispute. Safety response. Asterisk Cynthia still wasn't backing down, so neither was I. Tom and I compared every expansion map we could find. The oldest version showed my property correctly. A later version contained a dotted road labeled asterisk proposed access, subject to owner approval. Asterisk 6 months later, for words disappeared. Asterisk subject to owner approval. Asterisk the dotted line became solid. Asterisk future community access. Asterisk no deed transfer had occurred. No easement had been recorded. Then Tom found an email Cynthia had sent before the engineering contract was approved. Subject line, asterisk West Gate timeline. Asterisk one sentence mattered. Asterisk, title has not yet been transferred. But once the old occupant is removed, access should no longer present an obstacle. Asterisk she knew. Before the notices, before the notice to vacate, before the police report. Cynthia knew Cedar Ridge didn't own my land. At the emergency meeting, every chair was filled. Cynthia sat beneath the Cedar Ridge logo with a microphone in front of her. This meeting is necessary because one individual has used his position and influence to intimidate this community. There it was, a new story. I wasn't a squatter anymore. Now I was a corrupt judge. Judge Mercer deliberately concealed his public position while provoking a dispute with this HOA. He is now using that position to pressure our board. People turned toward me. Cynthia finally looked confident again. This is an abuse of judicial power. I stood. Then forget my title. She stopped. I walked to the front, carrying my folder. Pretend I'm unemployed. Pretend I'm a mechanic. Pretend I'm the caretaker you thought I was when we met. I placed my certified deed on the table. Now read the deed. Nobody spoke. I added the recorded subdivision plat. Read the boundary. Then the certified survey. Read the parcel number. Cynthia's confidence began disappearing again. My job doesn't own these 46 acres. I tapped the deed. I do. Tom stood and held up the original West Gate map. When did subject to owner approval disappear? Cynthia snapped. I don't know what you're talking about. I placed the 3 maps side by side. Original boundary, proposed access, Cynthia's version. Someone asked, how much money has the HOA spent on this? Tom answered, $84,000. The room erupted. Cynthia grabbed the microphone. These expenditures were properly authorized. On whose land? Someone shouted. She didn't answer. I connected my laptop to the projector. Her email appeared on the wall. Asterisk title has not yet been transferred. Asterisk the room went silent. I read the next line. Asterisk, once the old occupant is removed, access should no longer present an obstacle. Asterisk Cynthia stood. That email is being taken out of context. Then give us the context. She looked at the board. Nobody spoke. When you told these residents the county confirmed I had no ownership interest. I said, you knew title had never transferred to Cedar Ridge. Correct? Our legal advisors, name one. Silence. Then Sheriff Hale spoke from the back of the room. That's the same question I asked her. Cynthia turned. Hale walked forward and placed a copy of her complaint on the table. You told my department Judge Mercer was an aggressive squatter on HOA property. He looked at the deed. County records say otherwise. Cynthia tried one final time. He used his position to manipulate this entire situation. I shook my head. No, Cynthia. I slid the deed toward her. You called me a squatter before you knew what I did for a living. That ended it. The room remembered the caretaker, the old truck, the abandoned farmhouse. The man who supposedly didn't belong. Cynthia hadn't been fighting a judge. She'd been trying to erase a landowner. Before anyone left, 3 board members called for an emergency vote to suspend her authority pending an independent review. She slammed her hand against the table. You can't do this. I built this community. Tom looked at her. No, we paid for it. That was the last time Cynthia controlled the room. The Westgate project was frozen the next morning. Contractors received stop work notices. Every violation against my property was withdrawn. The notice to vacate disappeared. Then the independent review confirmed what the records had shown from the beginning. Cedar Ridge had never owned my land. There was no recorded access easement. There was no county determination declaring my farmhouse abandoned. There was no legal basis for Cynthia to tell law enforcement I was trespassing. And the HOA had spent more than $84,000 preparing a project on property it didn't control. Cynthia resigned before the review was complete. In her resignation letter, She called the investigation a political attack. Nobody cared anymore. A month later, a survey crew came to my driveway. This time, I invited them in. They reset the boundary markers according to the recorded survey. At the entrance, I installed one sign. Asterisk private property, Mercer family land, Est. 1919. Asterisk no threat, no insult, no HOA logo. Just the truth. The new Cedar Ridge board eventually asked to meet with me. They still had one legitimate problem. Emergency vehicles had limited access to the western side of the neighborhood. I could have refused to help. After what Cynthia had done, nobody would have blamed me. But Cedar Ridge had hundreds of residents, and they weren't Cynthia. So I agreed to negotiate a narrow emergency easement directly with the county fire department. Fire trucks, ambulances, emergency vehicles, nothing else. No visitor traffic, no recreational expansion, no West Gate, no HOA ownership. Every line recorded properly. 6 months later, Cedar Ridge adopted a new policy. No property-based enforcement notice could be issued without recorded documentation establishing HOA authority. The West Gate rendering disappeared from the clubhouse. So did Cynthia's nameplate. My farmhouse stayed exactly where it had always been. One morning, I ran into Sheriff Hale outside the courthouse. He looked at me. Still squatting out there, Judge? Getting comfortable every night? I smiled. My family's had more than 100 years of practice. He laughed and headed inside. That evening, I drove home through the same entrance Cynthia once claimed belonged to her community. The old farmhouse was still there. The fence was still there. The oak tree was still there. And all 46 acres were exactly where they'd always been. Cynthia had tried to change ownership with a clipboard, a modified map, and a lie repeated loudly enough that she expected everyone else to accept it. She thought calling me a squatter would make me one. She thought calling my land community property would make it hers. She thought calling the sheriff would turn her story into the truth. It didn't. The land never moved. The boundary never changed. The deed never stopped carrying my family's name. And being a county judge wasn't what saved my property. The deed did. That's what Cynthia never understood. Real authority doesn't come from the loudest person in the room. And ownership doesn't come from a title on a clipboard. Sometimes when someone insists your property belongs to them, you don't need to shout. You don't need to threaten them. You don't even need to tell them who you are. You just put the document on the table and ask one question.